The wind blew across the dusty plain as the Northmen rode along. The quiet wolf of a Winterfell and 6 bannermen leal and strong. For the she-wolf who had aroused a war, they'd hunted.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Vassals of Kingsgrave and to the 8th instalment in our linear reread of A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. We are an offshoot of a podcast of Ice and Fire, the longest running podcast dedicated to the works of George R.R. Martin, which is a long preamble but unusually relevant in this case. So today we are continuing finishing out the chapters in September 298 and into October 298, which brings us roughly halfway in the book. So we're covering Cat 6, Ned 10, Ned 11 and Sansa 3. So for any of you geeks out there who know this off by heart, it is the Tower of Joy. I feel there should be a drum roll for this. My name is Bina 007, I'm hosting the podcast, and today I'm joined by Nadia.
Hello everyone, this is Nadia.
Also by Adam.
What's up? Drownedsnow on the forum.
Cool. By Scott.
Hello, I'm Scott, Shaggydog on the forums.
By Matt.
Hey, it's Matt, Varley on the forums.
Also, we have a new participant, Peter Slalish 15 from the forums, who was good enough to send in a lot of commentary on each of the chapters, including his own particular crackpot theories to do with the Tower of Joy. So when I have edited this podcast, I'll put in chunks of his audio. So if you're wondering why there's no back and forth, that's why it's all pre-recorded. But, you know, it was cool that he made the effort to do that. And also you will have noticed new intro music to this podcast, which is by our podcast bard, Jed O'White Hart. So thank you to him for recording the Ballad of the Tower of Joy.
This is Peter Slalish 15 on the forums.
I first started out as a show watcher, so I started watching the show when it first came on, and I really, really liked the show, obviously. Then about season 3, I think, kind of right after the Red Wedding and everything on the show, I was hooked. I was enthralled. I couldn't believe this show. I'd never seen anything like it on television before. And I needed more. I didn't know I needed to go back. And so a friend of mine said, yeah, you could read the books. And I was like, well, I don't really have time with work and everything. And to start those big books like right now, that would be crazy. Whatever. But then when that season ended, it's always that thing where the show ends and it's the summertime and you just got, you kind of just like, what happened here? I need more of this. So that's when I started reading the books. As last summer is when I read the books for the first time. I, over the course of that summer, read all 5 books. Game of Thrones through Dance of Dragons. Even after seeing Game of Thrones and stuff on the show, which is basically a shot-for-shot remake, right? Those first couple seasons are really close to the books. But I forced myself. I was like, no, gonna have to read it right and do it that way. So then I got through all the books and I was just like, wow, this is incredible. So then I wanted more. And so then I started, looking at, then I kind of started getting into the theories and things like that, started watching videos on YouTube about theories, and I couldn't get enough. And so then this podcast stuff started because I am in my car a lot for my job, and so I just would pop in a podcast, and just you guys became a big favorite. So I've gone back and listened to kind of a lot of your episodes, and I really like the stuff you guys have said about the series, and so thought I might try and contribute my small part. So without further ado, favorite character, I really, really loved Robb. I loved Robb. When Robb was killed, I was crushed. I was so excited for him. Got totally wrapped up in the young wolf, King in the North thing. I couldn't let go for a really long time. So then all my love for Robb has kind of shifted to Jon. And I know people rag on Jon, but people rag on Jon kind of like how I rag on Dany. I don't know. I have a hard time with Dany's character sometimes, but I know it's really important, so I hang in there for her.
So, without further ado, Nadia, do you want to take it away with Cat 6?
Yes, I'll start with that. Okay, so Cat 6. Catelyn makes her way past the high road after having fended off multiple attacks by the mountain clans. She is met by Sir Donald Waynwood, who escorts Catelyn and a captive Tyrion Lannister to the Bloody Gate. Sir Donald reveals that Lady Lysa has forbidden any of her men to leave the Vale in case they are needed to defend it. Catelyn starts to have doubts about Tyrion's guilt, as he shows no sign of being guilty. At the Bloody Gate, Catelyn is reunited with her uncle, Sir Brynden, the Blackfish. He escorts Catelyn to the gates of the Moon, but Roderick Castle is left behind because of his wounds. However, the Singer Marillion and the sellsword Bronn decide to go with Catelyn. On the way, she tells Sir Brynden about everything that has happened since the king's visit to Winterfell. Brynden says Lord Tully must be warned immediately because Riverrun would be the easiest target for the Lannisters. Brynden tells Cat that the mood in the Vale is angry since everyone suspects Lord Arryn was murdered. Lord Arryn's only son Robert is 6 and sickly, and Lysa is being surrounded by suitors, but she refuses to choose any of them. Brynden also thinks Lysa would not be nearly as helpful as Cat thinks. Her unhappy married life and having lost all her babies except Robert have made her very scared, and now Cat has brought a lion to her door. It is dark by the time they reach the gates of the Moon, and Cat wants to rest for the night before making the ascent to the Eyrie. But Nestor Royce tells her that Lysa has sent word that Cat must come to her immediately, even though the ascent is treacherous at night. Cat is introduced to Maya Stone, who promises to get Cat to the area safely. They ride on mules first to the Way Castle Stone, then Snow, and after a terrifying climb, to the last Way Castle Sky. At Sky, Cat is so exhausted she chooses to ascend to the Eyrie by a basket raised by winches. At the Eyrie, she is immediately escorted to Lysa's Solar, where Lysa is waiting for her. Cat sees that the years have not been kind to Lysa, and she is no longer the beauty she once was. As soon as they are alone, Lysa starts shouting at Cat for having brought her fight to the Vale. They are interrupted by Robert, but Cat wants to continue their argument. Lysa, however, thinks Robert should not hear any of it. When Robert gets scared by Cat, Lysa comforts him by breastfeeding him. Cat warns Lysa that she cannot hide in the Vale forever. Lysa wonders what she will do with Tyrion. Robert suggests they make him fly.
Good summary. Thoughts, anyone? Everyone?
Oh, the chapter in which we see all of Lysa's craziness.
Yeah, it's disturbing on many levels.
How long can you breastfeed? Like, does the milk just run out? Or
Not if you keep breastfeeding.
I
Really?
think, yeah, if you keep breastfeeding, it just
There's
sort of...
there's a
you
whole
make it
movement.
fly.
Like you see now people like literally breastfeeding, like, and their kids are in elementary school.
That's gross.
It's weird, yeah, but it's, people are now, that's their thing. So
People are the worst.
What on
someone gets it in their head that like breast milk is like the best thing ever for your children, growing up, and so they breastfeed till they're like 10.
You?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my response.
Nicely done, Nadia. I mean, the thing is, it may be the best thing for the kid, but presumably not for the mum, and not for their mental health. Maybe good for their physical
it's
health.
best for the kids until a certain age, like when they're 1 or 2, but that's about it.
And right
when
now
they're not really eating a lot of food.
It's so early that all these people are doing this. Like, none of the kids have grown up. Like 20 years from now, we're going to be seeing the therapy bills for this.
Right?
Agree. Which brings about a question that Peter Slalish 15 asked, which is, how long do you all think that Sweet Robin's going to stick around?
Oh, he's not long for the world.
Do you all think that Sansa's going to be complicit in killing him?
No, he's going to survive till the end.
What?
What?
Say what now?
Oh yeah, he's going to survive till the end and then just be like sacrificed for nothing or something. It's going to be like one of those, I think it's just going to be one of those moments where George messes with us.
If you're my secret Sansa, can you send me whatever your smoking.
Well, because otherwise he dies in like the next 3 chapters of the next book or something.
Yes,
is
I
what it
think
feels
so.
like.
He does.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much he's toast because that's part of Littlefinger's plan to wed Sansa to Harry the Heir. So
Right.
So adios, kid. Nice knowing you.
Yeah.
Indeed.
No more boobs for you.
Do we think Littlefinger's plans are going to work out, at least short term?
I
Like
want them
how
to.
far is he going to succeed?
I want them to because I want to see how Sansa reacts. I think it's going to make her character arc interesting. And
Yeah, I think
his
short
plans do
term.
work, kind of ish,
Yeah.
haven't they so far?
Does she actually understand that Littlefinger is killing Robert slowly?
On the cusp of
Like
understanding.
she knows about the
Sweet sleep. Yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah, and
does
also the
she
Mace.
know what it's actually doing?
Well, the Maesters have said, he shouldn't be given any more, and that they were uncomfortable with the amounts that they'd have already given him. So yeah, she should be aware that Littlefinger is sort of trying to slowly off him.
But I don't even think she
But
cares.
see, but the thing is, the sweet sleep stops the seizures, right? But they're taking a toll on Robert's body anyway. So it's sort of,
Right, it's like chemotherapy. Like you pump poison into your body to kill cancer, but it still hurts you.
It doesn't matter if you do it or not. It's gonna, get worse anyway.
Right, one's gonna kill you. One's. Yeah. No, I agree.
Because I know that Varley loves Cat. I wanted to say that I actually
Motherfucker.
I quite
She's
like.
the fucking worst.
Maybe, but I think in this particular chapter she's okay, right? Because it feels like she's quite self-aware. Like she recognizes that she needed Bronn to survive. She realizes that Tyrion's been empowered now, and that Bronn's going to be loyal to him, so she's not stupid. And also, there's a really nice sentence where she says when she meets Maya Stone, who's a bastard, she couldn't help but think of Ned's bastard on the wall, and the thought made her angry and guilty both at once. So she's not entirely heartless.
But I think Scott
Yeah, but
and
she's
Adam
still
posted on the
stupid.
forums, that like ascending the Eyrie at night, like another just fucking stupid, unnecessary move.
Yeah, because
Like,
her sister made her do that.
Yeah, but she also allowed Bronn and Marillion to go ahead with her and leave the rest of the company behind. Now Tyrion has someone that she knows is going to be out to help them. And also she was revealing the whole history of what brought her to this point to her uncle on the way up within earshot of Tyrion.
Right.
So if
But it specifically said they weren't. They were out of earshot.
I think that meant the rest of the
does
party, not the other people who were traveling with them. That meant
No, it specifically said out of earshot from Tyrion and Bronn and Marillion.
Let me check.
So
Oh, the summary, I guess.
I love the thought of the Eyrie, but how impractical is it? Like when they're skirting a very narrow thing, it has to be provisions have to be brought up there. They have the elevator thing, but how do you bring up that much provision to man a castle like that, on that narrow little windy path?
I think the mules do most of the work.
Yeah, until they can only walk, and then she decides to take the basket. I mean, my interpretation of that whole thing
is all of the Vale is very fertile, right? So they have a lot of food crops and everything, and all of that is sort of hidden behind the bloody gate, right? Which is very difficult to pass in itself. So,
I guess, but just getting it up to the Eyrie, just seems.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult, but then it makes it almost impregnable.
I think it's ridiculous, actually, the design of the Eyrie. I think it's George R.R. Martin getting carried away with making things as obscure as possible. But it's not practical. You wouldn't actually... I mean, yes, of course, you try and build a castle on higher ground. But the way in which you get to it is so ridiculous.
They have to spend winters. They can't spend winters at the Eyrie, so they have to come down anyway for a few years.
Yeah, so it's pointless.
Winter lasts for 3 or 4 years at least, right? And they have to come down for that anyway.
I think the Eyrie is a total fracking waste of money and architecturally stupid.
I agree.
It sounds
you just stand outside the bloody gate. Okay, so the Vale can feed itself for years. Just stand a siege, and eventually everyone will starve.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Agree.
Unless
it's
you're
totally, it's a vanity castle,
and then you could just. Yeah, it really is. It's like straight out fantasy.
It's
cast.
like I need that view, and like if it was built by like the Targaryens, it would kind of make more sense, right?
Right.
But
Like dragon landing pads and shit like that.
yeah, it's the sort of thing where it's like, oh no, let's build something real high where no one can get to us, and we can hold like 10 men and do nothing.
To me, it's like Neuschwanstein. It's like those castles that Ludwig II used to build, the absolute nutter mad king of Bavaria in the late 1880s. Like all these sort of fantasy castles that became the model for Disney
the
castles.
Cinderella.
Yeah,
the
like
Cinderella castle.
yeah, beautiful, and the poetry and the way in which George describes them is really beautiful. You know, these sort of needles piercing the sky, and you look down upon the clouds, and the writing in this chapter is beautiful, and it's very Minas Tirith-y. But ultimately, Minas Tirith made sense. It kind of made sense as a citadel, where in a way that the Eyrie to me just doesn't. To me, it's just George getting ahead of himself.
It's like a king built a summer home.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know, because if it's really not meant to hold off that many people, like I don't think it's meant to hold off armies and armies and armies. I think it's more or less just designed to hold off the other mountain clans that exist out there. And if you can be self-sustaining within the Vale, and you can just keep the other clans out, then that's kind of what they were going for, isn't it?
Pretty miserable existence, though.
But it does kind of ensure a ruling seat where you don't really have to spend a lot of resources on it to guard it or worry about attack, or you can just sit up there and rule your kingdom.
But you do need to spend resources because just like I said, like getting shit up there, like even information, like it takes forever.
Right, but you got one bastard to bring you stuff up for the dozen people that live there. I mean, you don't have to have 500 people to protect it, is what I mean.
Yeah, but the bastard's only been around, 15
If someone
years?
bribes
16?
that one or two bastards, then
Probably
you're
had
screwed.
someone before.
They bring up poison or something.
Theory has been around for hundreds of years, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's why they have that whole winch and pulley system to bring carts and whatnot up, to bring up supplies.
It's very fragile.
What would happen if there was a severe storm and the cliff face, or there was an earthquake or something? Like, oh my gosh.
Or like a dragon came by and just anyway, we may find out.
Visenya went to the whale to...
Yeah, she did. And she what'd she do? Bring the sun
She
on
flew,
Dragonback and in a veiled threat that's I will toast your son, but really I'm just laying him right on Dragon, and the veil bent the knee immediately. Am I wrong?
What do you think of...
No, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay. Whew. All right.
What do you think of Lysa's decision to pull in all her knights and bannermen into the Eyrie and not let them compete in the tourney? At first I thought this was really paranoid, and then I thought, well, but look at what happens to Winterfell when they empty it out of its troops.
But the
It's
Royces went to the tourney.
Yeah, but they have their own agenda.
But they're still part of the Vale.
True that.
Yeah, I don't think she pulled everyone out until the war actually, or kept everyone in until the war actually started.
I think at this point they're still marshaling forces because in the next chapter we get that the Lannisters are calling their men, and so are the Tullys.
Yeah.
So I think this is still at that phase where they can still pull their men back and get people secured. So I think it's actually a smart move. I mean, if she's predicting that the realm's going to plunge into war, and she probably has a good notion of that because of Littlefinger, then, hey, okay, I'll just hold off, let these guys slaughter each other, and we'll see what happens when it's all over.
But isn't the Tully words family, duty, honor? Shouldn't she help out Riverrun?
Yeah, she should.
But she's crazy.
Oh, well, no doubt.
But
I mean...
Well, there's Sweet Robin.
She
That's
has
family.
one son. I mean, okay, so if you had a choice between your son and the rest of your family, who would you choose?
Your son.
I don't
Exactly,
have a
that's-
son, so I don't know.
But, immediate family is going to come beyond extended family to anyone, I think, right? Your children have to come first in the hierarchy of
Exactly.
But I
family.
mean,
Exactly.
she
She's
doesn't.
not-
She doesn't really have any reason to worry, though, right? Legitimately,
But-
we find out later.
But
Okay,
so,
and
she's not an Aaron.
Robert basically said that he was going to take Robert and give him over to the Lannisters, okay? So he was going to foster Robert with Tywin Lannister, right? And to Lysa, that is a huge threat because she's lost all her kids, right? and she's lost all her babies, and Robert is the only one she's got, and he's sick anyway.
Agree. Like, from her perspective, it's quite rational. And even her behaviour at the Eyrie now, all she needs to do is hold up and wait for Littlefinger to arrive. You know, she's operating from a position of deep sort of comfort at this point. Like, the plan is coming together until Cat shows up.
Yeah, exactly.
Really screws everything up.
I think
Do
we
you
already
think-
mentioned that in the last episode.
Do you think she's aware of the plan, or just like Littlefinger's like, oh, we'll do this and then we'll get married?
I think Littlefinger probably reveals it to her in bits and pieces. He doesn't tell her the whole plan.
He's probably majoring very heavily on the marriage part of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, more than likely he's telling her enough to the point where he can string her along so that once he becomes a lord of someplace like Harrenhal, then he can, marry her, and it won't be like a big scandal, and there won't be a big problem with it. So yeah, he's definitely sold it to her, and she's bought it lock, stock, and barrel, no question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in a sense you've got to have a little bit of sympathy for her. She's very mentally and probably physically frail after all the miscarriages and whatnot.
Oh, she's definitely Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
Oh, and another reason she won't help Riverrun after what her father did. I mean, he forced her to have an abortion, right? Which
Yeah.
is we find out later.
She does not care about
So
that
there's-
family.
So there's obviously some emotional baggage there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And jealous of her sister as well.
Yeah, but it's not like an either or situation. I mean, she could easily send even a token force of troops just to go and help out. Send 100 guys. That's not
Right.
that big. I mean, it's not
But-
like it's not like either I go help the Tullys and sacrifice my son, or I keep my son safe and lose the rest of my family. She's easily could just send a token force or send some sort of aid, but she just opts to completely shut them out.
Right.
See,
and
but okay, so Lysa has been forced into this marriage, okay? She was very, very young and she was in love with somebody else, and then she was forced to marry a very, very old man.
yeah, but I mean that kind of thing happens all the time.
And then she had to live in King's Landing, which is a terrible place to live. So now she's just defending herself. She's what she's thinking is rational for her. It might not seem like that to us, but it's very rational for her. She doesn't have a very good relationship with her father right now. So
Well, of
that's
course it's
obviously going
rational to her.
reflect in, her decision making.
Of course, it's rational to her because she's actually doing it. Like she can talk herself into doing anything and justify it, but it's not rational to anyone else. Like, why would she leave King's Landing immediately after? We at this point in the book we're thinking that the Lannisters are actually a threat to her.
So Robert Baratheon would not be able to give away Robert Arryn to the Lannisters.
But he was like
Because-
promised to Dragonstone and like 3 other places too. But at this point in the book, we think that the Lannisters have poisoned Jon Arryn, and that they would be after her. But we know from later books that that's not the case. So why would you flee immediately?
Probably because Littlefinger told her that Robert was going to be taken away and you had better run.
Okay, so Peter Slater 15 has this point, which I'm going to try and summarize now, but I'll just play his clip in the real thing.
Getting into the chapters here, I'll kind of start with my thoughts on Cat 6. So I loved kind of how in this chapter, rereading it and kind of looking at it again recently, I didn't really first realize how influential the Blackfish had been on the Tullys, just as the Edmure and Cat and Lysa, and even Baelish. You get that blurb from Cat on how they'd run to him with their problems and how Hoster was always away. That's big. I mean, I think that kind of you can see later how maybe Cat especially kind of got that hard kind of resolve from the Blackfish, and you can see that kind of come out in this chapter and how they get along so great. So I really loved that there and really noticed that. The other thing is, I don't know why, but I'm a big fan of Robert Aaron. I know he's kind of, in a lot of people's minds, kind of a whiny little bitch, but I love him. I think he knows more than he lets people think. I think that, you especially get this in Dance with Dragons and kind of in that Winds of Winter preview, how he kind of knows people are trying to get rid of him. And he's still so young, and that's kind of crazy how he kind of has that intuition on how, he kind of understands that people don't really think of him as much. So I think that's kind of cool. But in this chapter, obviously, he comes off as really whiny and stuff. But my question, I guess, to the group would be kind of how long do you guys think that Robert Aaron will stick around? Knowing George and everything like we do, he'll probably be around for a while. But do you? The bigger question is kind of how. Will Baelish be able to convince Sansa so much that he has a bigger plan, she has a bigger plan, and that Robert Aaron is so inconsequential that she'll be okay with, if not complicit in offing Robert Aaron somehow? Because I feel like that would have to happen for their plan to really work. So then the other big takeaway I had from this chapter, and this kind of comes out, and there's this one line, I forget where it is exactly, when talking about kind of how Lysa and Kat both had arranged marriages, but then how, obviously Kat's has worked out a lot better, seemingly, than Lysa's did with Jon Arryn. How, they grew to love each other, actually, even though she was betrothed to Brandon. I really kind of, you get a sense in this as to why, Ned and Kat really worked, and it's in some of her reactions in this chapter and how she kind of has initial feelings but kind of puts them down. She wants to say things to Lysa when she says certain things, but she says no. Or, the Blackfish is talking to her and she has, or Maya Stone or whatever, and she'll have initial kind of misgivings or initial thoughts, but she'll kind of say to herself, no, I gotta do this instead, I gotta be more honorable, I gotta do the hard thing, I'm a Tully, blah, blah, Tullys do this, kind of like how Ned says Starks do this, man has to always swing the sword kind of thing. So they have that kind of personal honor together, which I really think I think they can share that pretty well. And I think it's also why, she takes it so much more personally when she thinks that Ned has this bastard and that he kind of broke that code that they've both kind of been raised on that way. So I think that's why she maybe takes it even harder. It's because in every other aspect of life, they're so similar that way. So I kind of really feel that comes out in this chapter, is how they kind of, as a couple, get along so well.
But is it disproportionate from what other noblewomen would have done? Cersei has her husband's bastard killed.
True.
And they were...
Well,
I don't
Cersei's
think-
crazy pants, too.
Yeah, I don't think Cersei is our benchmark of sane aristo behavior.
But I don't think it's kind of thing that's done, really. Jon he's not just living in the castle. He's been brought up very, very prominently as Ned's son, right? He's had sort of the same upbringing as the rest of his children. Maybe not as privileged, but close.
Right, he's
I
still
think
the
other
bastard, but
bastards,
he's...
even if they're raised in the same castle, they don't have the best lives.
What's his name? Edric Storm is doing okay.
But Eddard Storm is the son of a noblewoman, and
So is Jon
Robert
Snow.
officially
Yeah.
accepted.
But
No.
who does... No,
No,
but
but
who does
nobody knows that.
Catelyn...
Ned has never-
Yeah. Catelyn maybe...
Ned has never revealed his mother's name, so nobody knows if she was a noblewoman or not.
I think
She
that's
could
the
have been a
bigger
whore.
issue. I think that's the bigger issue for Kat, is that she never kind of got closure on exactly what had happened. So there's always this sort of, why the hell will he never tell me who his father is or who the mother is?
Yeah, he must really have
so-
loved her in some mythic high romance way if he won't even tell me.
Yeah.
If Ned had actually just admitted, you know what, I got drunk and I knocked up this washerwoman and out came a baby, she probably would not have given two flying fucks. But the fact that he makes it out...
Yeah, exactly. I think
It's never the crime, it's always the cover-up.
I think the not knowing made it a lot
You know
worse.
I'm right, Scott.
Yeah. He's secretly the, son of old Nan. Ned got really drunk one night.
Oh,
That is a visual image we do not need.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, wow, that was gross.
Yeah. So, but do you buy into Peter Slalish 15's kind of psychological theory that that's why Cat is this person who values honor, and therefore, this would be a particularly heinous crime for her?
Yeah, I
No.
agree.
Yes, Peter Slalish 15. Backhanded slap from Matt Varley. Lovely.
Right?
I mean, I probably didn't explain it properly.
Yeah. I suppose he's a coward and he can't defend Catelyn on the podcast.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's another one of those things that Kat does contradictorily. She lets Jaime Lannister go later on, and that's flat out betraying Robb. And yeah, she's doing it because she's rolling the dice and taking a chance that it'll get her daughters back. But there's no guarantee on that one. That's literally like the long shot. So I mean, Kat tends to be full of these like contradictions.
Releasing Jaime is one of the most understandable things that Catelyn does. I mean, arresting Tyrion is a different matter entirely, but releasing Jaime, that's at a point where she is very, very desperate, where she's lost her youngest sons, right? And she makes this very desperate attempt to get back her daughters. It doesn't matter if what the probabilities in that equation are, but she just goes for it because it's probably the only chance she has to get these two daughters back.
Yeah, but it's also the most amazingly stupid move somebody could possibly make.
It is.
I mean,
very stupid,
you can set up a hostage swap where you can actually see if your daughters are still alive and do it that way as opposed to just take it back.
Thank you.
No, but
Varley, I think you found your brother from another mother.
I know. We're tight.
that is. I just think that was very understandable. What Kat did in that situation. Any parent would have, probably made a similar decision.
Does George have kids?
No.
He doesn't seem to have a high opinion of parents and the decisions that they are motivated to make. It's almost a rather malevolent view of the insanity of parenthood and what parents will do for their children.
That's actually kind of a good observation I've never thought about.
Yeah, it's an essay waiting to be written. Does George have...
George hates parents.
I think he somehow doesn't fundamentally get it. I don't think
he hates
Yeah.
weddings.
Well, I think in a way you can't unless you've been through that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, I see parents like around Boston, and it's just like, what the fuck are you doing to your kids? Like,
oh yeah,
like, I can definitely judge parenting. Like, I'm okay with it.
There's some aspects of that too, like if like people get mad if a kid's like screaming in the store, and you're like, well, that's just kind of natural, and it's like they might be upset, and like that might be upsetting you as a person, but like depending on how the parent's handling it. Like I was at the store yesterday, and the mom was like, "You say my name again, and you're not getting anything for Christmas." I'm like, "Oh my god, you don't know how to handle your child." Like like it's natural.
That doesn't sound that unusual, actually.
The kid's
You've
like
never had
3 years old. Like.
Yeah.
But when like we were talking about the breastfeeding thing, it's like that's a bad decision. Like I can make that as an independent observer that you should not be breastfeeding your child at 5.
Yeah, but then it's one of those things. It's like religion or something else. You're like, well, you can't tell people how to raise their kids, but like, yeah, that's.
But why can't you? Doesn't it at some point become a public health issue?
It does, but there's things like that where it's not. There's no definitive, like we've decided this is wrong, or the courts have decided this is wrong, and it's just sort of like I guess that's their choice, to not put their kids in school until they're
It's like the whole immunization issue.
Yeah,
it has
like
huge public health ramifications.
Oh my god!
If you see a kid that gets polio, you shouldn't be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry that your kid got polio. I feel sympathy for you." Like you should be giving scorn to that parent for causing that because they could have prevented it.
Don't get me fucking started.
Yeah.
Because the polio vaccine was like based on fetal tissue research, and all these people are like, "Oh no, no, I'm not going there."
No, go there, Matt, because it was just like really funny.
All right.
Unleash your anger.
Makes me stronger. Gives
Still
me focus.
leads to the dark side. Anything else on Cat 6? We all seem united in the bonkersness of Lysa and Cat. No?
Yeah, I think that's about
Well,
it.
Oh,
happy.
this is the introduction to Brynden Blackfish. I mean, nobody had anything to say about that.
Well, he's a Don. He's a boss. There's nothing else to say. I didn't realise he was gay the first time I read Song of Ice and Fire. I'm such an idiot. But, hey.
Sir Lyn Corbry is also in this chapter too, and he's the guy that Littlefinger has working for him in A Feast for Crows, pretending to be one of the guys rallying the Lords of the Vale against Littlefinger. But he's got him working for him so he can find out who's actually against him. But this is the first we see of him in this chapter too.
Wait a minute, what? I thought Corbray was the one that drew the sword, like, during the parlay.
Yeah, he is. Littlefinger
Yeah.
basically paid him to do that so he could find out who his enemies in the Vale are.
Wait a minute, what? Did I miss
Yeah,
something?
that was in
when
Sun's
was
chapter.
that?
Mind
he mentions-
blown.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, he mentions
Seriously.
it to Sansa later on. He's like, "Yeah, I got him on the payroll."
No, Sansa actually figures it out.
What?
Yeah, Sansa actually, he's basically, Littlefinger is testing Sansa, and she sort of figures out that there's something definitely going on there, and that Lyn Corbray might be allied with Littlefinger.
Oh
And
my god, I
Littlefinger
missed so much
confirms
then.
that Littlefinger confirms that he's been paying Lyn Corbray with gold and young boys, and to get him on his side, basically.
People
Wait a minute,
need
am
to
I
stop
confusing him with
distracting
someone
me
else?
Putting pictures of bloody Poe Dameron on the call.
Oh boy.
I can't function if people do that.
Bina's getting all the lady boners.
Seriously, I'm losing hormones over this guy.
Alright, so anyway.
Okay, so if no one else has anything else to say about Cat 6, then we skip over a whole bunch of chapters actually. So we skip over Ned 9 when Ned's attacked by Jaime, over Dany 4, which happened actually back in June 298, so that shows you how far the Dany chapters have been sprinkled through the novel by George. We also skip over Bran 5 and Tyrion 5, so a bunch of time later we get to Ned 10, and we also finally get into October 298. So at this point, he's only actually been in Winterfell 2 months, and he's been such a bad player of the Game of Thrones that he's already sort of basically incapacitated on Milk of the Poppy and near the end of his days. So
You mean King's Landing?
yeah, you know what I mean. King's Landing. See, this is what happens when Amber posts a picture of Poe Dameron. Can't concentrate. So over to you, Varley, for Tower of the Joy Gorgeousness.
Alright, so this is a great chapter. If you'll allow me, I'll just read the first 2 pages I have.
Please do.
Yes, please.
He
Is
dreamt
this the
an
best
old dream.
chapter, by the way?
What's
the
that?
whole, is this the best chapter in the whole series?
Yes, one of them.
Yes.
It's got to be top 5, hasn't it?
Oh shit.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure now. Oh fuck. Alright, let's do this. He dreamt an old dream of 3 knights in white cloaks and the Tower of Long Fallen, and Lyanna in her bed of blood. In the dreams, his friends rode beside him, as they had in life. Proud Martin Cassell, Jory's father, faithful Theo Wall, Ethan Glover, who had been Brandon's squire, Sir Mark Risewell, soft of speech and gentle of heart, the Crannogmen, Howland Reed, Lord Dustin on his great red stallion. Ned had known their faces as well as he knew his own ones, but the years leach at a man's memories, even those that he vowed never to forget. In the dream, they were only shadows, grey wraiths on horses made of mist. They were 7 facing 3, in the dream as it had been in life. Yet these were no ordinary 3. They waited before the round tower, the red mountains of Dorne at their backs, their white cloaks blowing in the wind. And these were no shadows, their faces burned clear, even now. Sir Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning, had a sad smile on his lips. The hilt of the great sword Dawn poked over his right shoulder. Sir Oswell was on one knee, sharpening his blade with a whetstone. Across his white enameled helm, the black bat of his house spread its wings. Between them stood fierce Sir Gerald Hightower, the White Bull, Lord Commander of the King's Guard. I looked for you on the Trident, Ned said to them. We were not there, Sir Gerald answered. Woe to the usurper if we'd been, said Sir Oswell. When King's Landing fell, Sir Jaime slew your king with the golden sword, and I wondered where you were. Far away, Sir Gerald said, or Ares would yet sit the Iron Throne, and our false brother would burn in 7 hells. I came down on Storm's End to lift the siege, Ned told them, and Lords Tyrell and Redwine dipped their banners, and all their knights bent the knee to us and pledged fealty. I was certain you would be among them. Our knees do not bend easily, said Sir Arthur Dane. Sir Willem Darry fled to Dragonstone with your queen and Prince Viserys. I thought you might have sailed with them. Sir Willem is a good man and true, said Sir Oswell, but not of the Kingsguard, Sir Gerald pointed out. The Kingsguard does not flee. Then or now, said Sir Arthur. He donned his helm. We swore a vow, explained Sir Gerald. Ned's wraiths moved up beside him, with the shadow swords in hand. They were 7 against 3. And now it begins, Sir Arthur Dane, the sword of the morning. He unsheathed Dawn and held it with both hands. The blade was pale as milk glass, alive with light. No, Ned said with sadness in his voice. Now it ends. And the rest of the chapter is just bullshit. Cersei's...
But not if you're Barra, because Ned fingers you and says he's going to come after you and kill you. That's not bullshit. And like Ned gets made Hand of the King again. I mean, that's not a trivial detail, because if he weren't made Hand of the King again, he couldn't then have the mountain arrested, which triggers the war and stuff. Yeah. Like, important shit does happen in the rest of the chapter.
If you read, like, those 2 pages and don't get, like, a little moved, come on, man.
Oh, we were moved.
Anyway, so yeah, Robert and Cersei visit Ned. Cersei's been like, "Oh, why are you attacking my family?" Robert's like, "Make peace," and here's the hand, and if you throw it in my face again, I'll give it to fucking Jaime Lannister. The end.
You know, it's important to notice that right after this whole argument about Daenerys, how he then is in bed and he dreams this dream again. It comes up again. And he dreams of, broken promises, the promise me, Ned, how he couldn't hold that promise to Lyanna. That's never been something I could understand. And this kind of goes into my whole thing about why I'm not sure that R plus L equals J. And this is kind of because the biggest thing being this: if Ned feels like he didn't keep his promise, I don't get that. Like, why would he feel that he didn't keep his promise if Jon is safe at the Wall? If he still, if he was able to survive kind of that whole, if he was able to protect him his whole life at Winterfell, and now he's at the Wall, what, if he's a secret Targaryen and Ned knows that, why is he still feeling like Jon isn't kind of safe? Why isn't he protected? I don't get that. I think that it's deeper than that. The other thing is Ned barely even thinks about Jon. If this was such a guilty thing hanging over his head, if this was something, that he dreamed about, if this dream, if Jon was tied to this dream that he dreamed many times, this old dream he dreamed many times, why does Ned only think about Jon a couple of times in this whole book, He only thinks about him when he's holding that baby bastard at that brothel. He only thinks about him when he's reminded of other bastards. And then I kind of get to the thing where it's, Dany reminds him of this whole Tower of Joy thing. Sorry, I should have said this at the beginning. I think Dany is the child that Rhaegar and Lyanna birthed. I think yeah, it might be a stretch. Yeah, I could be crazy for thinking that, but I just think Rhaegar and Lyanna being the parents of Jon is just too neat. I think it's all too cookie cutter. I think it's what we want. I think it's what we've all hoped for, maybe because of like Lord of the Rings and other things we've read. But it's just I don't think it feels right. And the reason for that is like the biggest I think evidence for it is if you even go to the Dany storyline. And in Dany's storyline, she keeps having dreams about that house with the red door, and she sees it in the House of the Undying, and she sees, that it's a huge deal. This house, all she wants, especially in the beginning of Game of Thrones and everything, is to just be at peace, go back to this House of the Red Door, run away from her problems, kind of. She doesn't want to do the whole Viserys conquer Westeros thing. She just wants to go home. She just wants to go to the Red Door. That's all she's really wanted. And I think that it's not, there are all kinds of things about that, you know. There are no 11 trees in Bravos, that whole thing, you know. Viserys is the only source of information we really have at this point about Dany. And I think it's important to realize that, you know, Viserys could totally be lying to her. Viserys could totally just be screwing with her so that he can have his army and go to Westeros. Like, why would he not? You know, Viserys, what we know about him, the selfish person that he is, why would he not lie to Daenerys for his own gains, you know? And so, you know, you go back, so again, with the Daenerys storyline, you think about how she, you know, she keeps thinking about this House of the Red Door, and that's where she wants to be. Quaithe, the biggest thing Quaithe always says to her over and over again is, remember who you are. Remember where you come from. You know, do the dragons know? Do you? You know, remember who you are. I think that she's always thought that she was something, and it was through Viserys. You know, I thought that you think, especially in Game of Thrones, that she gets her identity because of what Viserys tells her. And in the end, you know, she needs to come to realize that she's her own person, that she is, ultimately, I think the real realization will be is, yes, you are really special, you're the prince that was promised, or princess that was promised, whatever, and it's because you're actually Rhaegar's daughter, not a sibling. You know, that's huge. You know, it's the vision she sees in that House of the Undying of Rhaegar kind of birthing that savior whose song is the Song of Ice and Fire. Another big piece of this is, you know, you go back to early Game of Thrones, and it's like when Kat asks Ned, you know, she keeps hearing these whispers about this woman, Ashara Dane, and she asks Ned, you know, who is Ashara Dane? Like, what are they talking about? And Ned says, never ask me about Jon, when she didn't necessarily ask him about Jon, in my mind. And so that kind of gives it away a little bit that, you know, and then he forbids anyone from ever saying her name again, blah, blah. It's a huge, huge reaction from Ned. But then I think the other clue comes from Barristan, and it comes from the Hand's Tourney way back at Harrenhal, you know. So this kind of goes back to me, to the whole thing of Howland Reed. So Howland Reed, obviously we haven't seen him, but he's a big freaking deal in my mind. The detail is that Barristan tells us, you know, that Ashara looked to Stark, and that's the quote that people focus on, but they don't also focus on the fact that Ned and Howland shared a tent that night. So that means that neither of them could have been the Stark, like, they couldn't have been in the running for who Ashara looked to. So that leaves Brandon, right? So Brandon already being the womanizer that we know about, because he already, you know, hooked up with Lady Dustin, I think it's pretty clear that, like, he was left in the clear to go hook up with Ashara Dane, or at least start something with her. Maybe not, maybe they didn't have sex that night or whatever, but maybe they struck up a romance of some kind. I think ultimately what happens is, you know, Ned goes to Starfall with the already, you know, because he had so much respect for Arthur Dane, brings back House Dane's sword, but also brings this Targaryen Daenerys, and swaps it out for the secret Jon, who was Ashara's and Brandon's baby, who I think they actually had together at King's Landing, not necessarily at the tournament. I think that they had it at King's Landing because Ashara was at court in King's Landing. Brandon was there for a little bit before I think he got strangled. So, like, they had a chance. They could have, you know, maybe in the crypts or something, like, not in the crypts, in the dungeons, maybe birthed the secret baby. I don't know. Anyways, it's possible, right?
Okay, so when did everyone figure out R plus L is equals to J? At what point did you realize it, if you did?
On the internet?
Yeah, I figured
After
out.
I read the book. Yeah. I mean, I read the book before the show, so yeah, way after I read the book the first time.
Because for me, it was this chapter, and then Ned had that dream again when he was in the Black Cells.
Well, you're
Like
definitely
your
sharper
first
than I am.
your first time reading it, or like on a reread or something?
No, the first time I was reading it.
Kudos.
So basically, this chapter where it mentions Lyanna screaming and the bed of blood, and then it was sort of reinforced again in the chapter in which Ned is in the Black Cells, and it sort of I don't know, it just clicked. I missed a lot of things, but this was not one.
Yeah, good on you, because I totally missed it my first read through.
Yeah, I got it on the second read through, but this go around, I'm not so sure.
Is this where we descend into R plus L equals J theories?
Yes, please. I think this would be the...
Who believes R plus L equals J?
I do.
Hand up.
I
It
do.
kind of has to.
I do.
Nope, no way. Absolutely not.
Shaggydog, tell us what's the deal?
Scott, are you still R plus L equals D?
Yeah, it's absolutely 100% Daenerys.
No.
Yeah.
Nope.
Okay, defend that statement, please.
Okay. Which part?
All of it.
Yeah. Okay, well, look at this from a linear point of view. Ned says, we went and we looked for you on the Trident. That's where Rhaegar gets killed. And they're all like, yeah, we weren't there. Okay, I went to King's Landing, and yeah, the Mad King got killed. Yep, we weren't there. Now, the whole point of Rhaegar kidnapping Lyanna was to fulfill the Prince That Was Promised prophecy. So if he has a child with Lyanna, that means Lyanna's given birth to a king, not a prince. That's a little weak, given. But if it's Daenerys, who can't inherit the throne, and since Maester Aemon said that the word for prince and princess is interchangeable in Valyrian, then Daenerys could still fulfill that prophecy, because being unable to inherit, it makes Viserys king. Hello?
Yeah, just digesting internally.
No.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's
I thought I just lost everyone here.
No. And in fact, it's
there.
interesting
Okay,
because the kind of the audio file that Peter Sladish 17 sent me also has like a 10-minute explanation of why he totally agrees with you, Scott, and why he thinks it all refers to Daenerys, and that in fact Jon is in fact the son of Brandon Stark and Ashara, and that baby was probably had in King's Landing, and then Ned switched out the babies at some point.
I
What?
would say in
No.
I would say in
No.
Starfall,
Okay, so
not King's
just-
Landing,
just-
because Ashara got sent away from King's Landing, so it would not be King's Landing. It would be in Starfall, because that's where Ned goes after the Tower of Joy.
Okay, well, I may be horribly misquoting. I'll put the audio into this at this point,
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
so that he's not getting
Okay, so
misquoted.
just using this chapter, okay. How many babies do we have at the moment? There's Aegon, who's probably dead when Ned reaches the Tower of Joy. Then there's Ashara's baby, who probably hasn't been born yet. Then there's Lyanna, who's currently giving birth. And then there is Rhaella, who is pregnant at the time, right? So Daenerys has not yet been born.
Mm.
Okay, so Aegon...
No, she's
Right,
born
being
on
born in the
Dragonstone.
tower.
Exactly, she's born on Dragonstone, right? So at this
No, she's
point,
not.
Ned says...
But is
that
she, though?
Rhaella
Is
was
she? Like, what's the
accepted
real
from
evidence?
King's Landing.
What's the real evidence? So Peter's point is that
Viserys said, like, he blamed her for his mother's death.
Mhm.
But how far is Viserys really a reliable source of information?
Oh my god. Okay, go on.
But what evidence is there that Daenerys is not Rhaella's child?
Well, look at Rhaella's. If you have the World Book,
Yeah.
after Rhaegar, there were 8 pregnancies between
Yes.
Rhaegar and Viserys. So, and every
Yeah.
kid that she, had either was stillborn. It, she was either stillborn, or she miscarried, or it died in infancy.
Yeah.
So she has a history of not carrying children to term.
But she
probably
did
was-
carry 2 children to term, at least 2 children, right? Rhaegar and Viserys. So she could
carried-
just as easily have carried a 3rd child to term, right?
Oh, she carried more than 2 children to term and gave birth, but some of them died in infancy. That's part of the problem.
But
big
not
part-
really. It's not. The problem does not lie with her, right? Okay, so the miscarriages might have been, she might have had certain issues. But if a child dies in infancy, this is at a time where modern medicine does not exist. So a lot of children died in infancy.
No, I'm talking about part of the R plus L equals J problem. So
Okay.
part of the problem is that you have that explanation, and it's kind of, in a lot of ways, the explanation that everybody wants to have happen. Like, a lot of people come to that conclusion and they're really vested in it. And actually, Bina, you said this the other day, or the podcast prior, where the first time you read through it, you kind of read it like an Agatha Christie novel. And R plus L equals J is kind of like the suspect in the murder mystery that you're supposed to come to the conclusion of as being the one that did it.
So the obvious red herring, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's where R plus L equals D actually has its full effect.
No, it doesn't. I don't
But my
believe it.
question is, how is it even possible? How would they have been exchanged?
What, the babies?
Sure. Ned. Okay, look what Ned does immediately after the Tower of Joy. He goes to Starfall, which is south in Dorne. That's enemy territory.
Yeah. Okay. So.
Well, no, they bent the knee.
Okay, so Ned goes
he's
to
returning the Sword of
Starfall,
the Morning.
right? Okay, so Ned goes to Starfall, right? At this point, Ned has 2 babies, right? He
No, he
doesn't
has
have
one.
2 babies, but there are 2 babies there. One is Ashara's baby, and then one is Lyanna's, right?
Well, he's bringing Lyanna's baby there, and then
Yeah,
he
exactly.
gets
He's
there,
bringing
and then
Lyanna's
Ashara's
baby
got her
there,
kid there, which is
and
Jon.
then Ashara's baby is there, right? Okay,
Mhm.
so but even if one of the babies had been Daenerys and the other had been Jon, and if they had been exchanged or whatever, how would Ned have gotten Daenerys to Dragonstone? How would she
Right.
have got
He doesn't.
Dragonstone at all?
He doesn't.
Who does?
He
Ashara jumps off Dragonstone and
hands over
jumps off Starfall.
Daenerys to Ashara. Well, that's the
Okay.
story. Ashara fakes her death and then smuggles Daenerys to Essos. Then Ned takes
How
Jon.
would she know to go to Essos when they're on Dragonstone?
Well,
Exactly.
Viserys.
Daenerys. Okay, so there are a lot of stories about Daenerys' birth. Okay, so they can't. There must have
She's
been people around.
Stormborn. Like that's part of her name. That's part of
Exactly,
her
she's
history
Stormborn because she was born during a storm.
on Dragonstone, not in fucking Tower of Joy.
Yeah, according to Viserys. Now think about
Not
this.
just according to Viserys. I'm sure Willem Dafoe had something to do with it too, and he's.
He certainly did. Thanks for bringing Willem Dafoe up. That reminds me. We know from the 5th book that a deal was made between Dorne and Willem Dafoe to marry off Viserys and one of the Martells to ensure that. Thank you. To ensure that when he comes of age, they'll take back the kingdom. They'll put Viserys back on the throne. We know the Martells are serious long-term game planners. It seems like one massive oversight to not include Daenerys in any of your game plans, just in case, I don't know, something happens like Viserys goes and gets himself killed by a Dothraki warlord or something. You would kind of want to have a plan B. And Daenerys isn't even mentioned in that marriage pact that gets signed in Braavos, which is witnessed by the Sea Lord. And it doesn't.
Well, either was Quentin.
What's up?
Either was Quentin. Like, it wasn't like, oh, okay, if this doesn't work out, it's Quentin and Daenerys.
Right, but that's something that the Martell Oberyn would have planned for or plotted for if he was aware of Daenerys' existence. He wasn't because she hadn't gotten to Braavos at that time. Now, keep this in mind. The Martells are Dornish, and Dornish law, men are equal to women in things like inheritance. So if Viserys becomes king, one of the things that they're probably going to pressure him for is to have Dornish law be the law of the land, which he's probably just going to agree to because why the hell not? He has a problem though. If Daenerys is Rhaegar's daughter, then he's just he's just basically handed over the throne to her because she would be in the direct line of succession.
So he has a huge incentive to make her believe she's the niece, not the daughter. I mean, the
other way
around.
you
know what I mean. Yeah.
And
So you have the motive now. You have the motive for why Viserys would fuck around with her.
Right, exactly. If
My mind is
Daenerys
blown.
is the younger sister of Viserys, then no problem. His inheritance to the throne is secured regardless of what happens. If she's the niece and in the direct line of kings, that's a larger problem as well. Also, another thing is Jon's not really all that special. He's not.
Well, that's fair enough, but
no prophetic dreams, nothing great. He's not hatching any dragons.
like a pseudo warg.
But Melisandre is having dreams about him.
yeah, and Brett will fight you on the Jon prophetic thing.
Okay,
I'll leave that to him.
Oh, I'm not saying he's not Azor Ahai, but he's definitely not the prince that was promised.
Actually, one of the points
I agree that Daenerys is the prince that was promised, but I still don't believe that Daenerys is, Rhaegar's daughter.
So one
Okay.
of the points or arguments that Peter Slalish 15 makes is that, to this point, that Jon isn't that special, is also that, what do we know about Jon or Ned's attitude towards Jon at this point? Why would he need to make this like huge promise? Like, what Peter says is the positioning of this vision that Ned has is very significant because it's coming right after he's basically gotten into this huge argument with Robert about assassinating Dany. And that has basically caused him to take this dramatic action of giving up being Hand of the King, which is huge, right? And, gets him into this position now where he's having this dream. And that it's bringing up all the stuff of I promise to keep, presumably, this baby safe. Well, nothing is endangering Jon at this moment to make you have a fever dream. Jon's safe at the wall, away from all the action. And also, what Peter Slalish 15 was saying is that, how often do we see Ned even refer to Jon in the course of this novel? Like, he's never thinking about Jon or concerned about Jon. He kind of almost quite callously packs him off to the wall and then just gets on with stuff.
Yeah,
Whereas
but
this threat to Dany prompts this huge kind of psychic response, which I kind of thought was fairly persuasive as well. And then the other thing I was thinking of is, the guys from the Boiled Leather Audio Hour always say, sort of in literary terms or narrative terms, what would be, when you think of all these theories, why would George do it? Does it make sense from a sort of, a literary standpoint? And I think it would be, it kind of like has a nice echo in the contemporary story, where we have Jon switching out babies. The idea that this, all this has happened before and all this will happen again, the idea that sort of Ned had already done this in this sort of dramatic way, I think would be quite a nice echo or symmetry in the narrative. I just feel that, I never really considered it seriously before, like listening to Scott and Peter Slalish, but now I kind of feel I need to investigate more. Because I don't think it's as obvious. I think a lot of things that we've been quite simplistically led to believe maybe aren't as obvious as we now think.
Yeah, once you really start looking at it, especially everything that goes on when she gets to the House of the Undying, that definitely changes some of the narrative when you kind of look at it through this sort of potential lens.
How so?
If you look at a lot of the stuff that they reveal to her, where she gets a lot of confusion on, it's because you have to keep in mind that she also is lost on it. Let me see if I can find it.
Well, one of the points while you're trying to find it that Peter Slalish makes is that a lot of the stuff that happens in the prophecies that Dany is involved in are about, and especially actually House of the Undying is about, realize who you are, realize what your identity is. And he thinks you can actually read the Dany chapters as basically Dany learning to look through the misinformation that Viserys has given her and realize truly who she is.
So is that the Slayer Lies kind of thing?
Yeah.
Something kind of like that, yeah.
So are we going to discuss timelines in this? Because I think Dany is quite a few months younger than Jon.
No, they're both 14.
Are they?
No, she was 12.
I think Dany was born a few months after because Rhaella was at Dragonstone for quite a few months before she gave birth.
I thought she was 12 at the beginning. Excuse me.
Well, luckily, we have a spreadsheet with a whole linear timeline, so we can look this shit up.
So basically what happened was Brandon went to confront Rhaegar, right, at King's Landing, and Aerys arrested them, and he roasted Rickard Stark in his armor and hanged Brandon Stark, which was sort of the trigger for Aerys raping Rhaella that night, right? Which presumably resulted in the pregnancy that, led to Dany.
Okay, so according to the spreadsheet, Jon turns 15 in August 298, because Benjen says he'd be back by Jon's name day. So broadly speaking, he's 15 August 298. If we go back on the spreadsheet, it says Dany's 14th birthday is May 298. Dany's 14th birthday on the far side of the Dothraki Sea. So Jon is considerably older.
Exactly.
3 months.
I remember that from somewhere. Jon is quite a few months older. And
Not 3 months, 9 months, no?
Exactly, 9 months, right? So it doesn't add up.
Wait, what was it?
So if you open up the spreadsheet link at the top of the Google Doc.
No, wait, is that the Daenerys birth based on Dragonstone or based on Tower of Joy?
Let me just see what the citation is.
Dragonstone, because that's the only birth date.
Exactly.
No, it says but doesn't it? It says on the chapter where she's pregnant, it was her 14th name day. And you can date when she realizes she's pregnant, according to this, to May 298.
Yeah, so it doesn't add up.
It doesn't add up because that's what she believes.
Yeah,
See,
which again
Bran-
goes to the
You know,
it goes to the
if I was
Viserys
born in
information.
Ashara's daughter.
I'm born in August, but if I was
Brandon
told all my
Ashara's
life I was
daughter.
born in January, okay, I'm born in January. Okay, here we go. Here's part of the thing from the House of the Undying. It's the scene where Dany's moving through it, and she's looking through some of the doors, and she's seeing things, and she's looking at
If it's
her older
the two dwarfs fucking, then
no, it's not that scene. No, it's the one where she's looking upon Rhaegar and Elia Martell, and she's asking him, will you write him a song? And he says, he has a song, the man replied. He is the prince that was promised, and his is the song of ice and fire. He looked up when he said it, and his eyes met Dany's, and it seemed as if he saw her standing there beyond the door. There must be one more, he said, though whether he was speaking to her or the woman in bed, she could not say. The dragon has 3 heads. So that was part of it, of Rhaegar trying to fulfill the prophecy of the prince that was promised. And then when she gets to the Hall of the Undying, let me just see here. Yeah, she's asking about the meaning of the visions she just saw and the sort of figures that are sitting around. The shape of the shadows, morrow's not yet made, drink from the cup of ice, drink from the cup of fire, mother of dragons, child of 3. Now, if she was the child of Rhaella had more than 3 children, considering those that died in infancy. Rhaegar only had 3 children.
That's pretty significant.
Child of 3.
Yep, child of 3.
Yeah, that's pretty
But-
straightforward, isn't it? Shit.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course Daenerys is just like, oh, what the hell are you talking about, child of 3? Because she thinks she's the daughter of the queen, not of Rhaegar.
Yeah, confirmation bias. You just hear what you think you want to hear.
Mhm.
I really hope that this episode spawns a follow-up VOC that's basically Shaggydog, Peter, other people, just all on this theory. I think this particular theory could have its own 2-hour episode.
Yeah. Oh,
And I will
absolutely.
and after this episode ends, I will start finding evidence that R plus L is equal to J and not D.
Yeah, I need to do like serious amounts of research. I'm sure
Yeah.
there's
Well, I
essays
think
written on this. That I need to read.
there's like some
Do
YouTube
you want me to
videos
send
that
you
are
like
quite long
tissues?
about it.
Because it's not going to happen.
Oh, bitch slap.
I'll work on it.
I actually don't care either way. I kind of feel that.
But okay, so if Dany is Lyanna's daughter, she's half Stark, right? Has Dany ever exhibited any Stark traits? Has Jon ever?
no, she's
exhibited any
fully like
Targaryen
Targaryen.
traits? I'm asking both the question: has Jon exhibited any Targaryen traits, and has Dany ever shown any Stark traits?
Besides like losing his position and power. No.
Jon is exactly what Jon should be. Jon is a warg, as is every single Stark alive, and that has and every descendant of the Kings of Winter is a warg. So he's exactly what he should be. And as far as Daenerys showing Stark traits, not really, but who needs direwolves when you got dragons?
Exactly, you just said every Stark alive, so
Is a
they're all
warg.
half Stark, right? They're all half Stark. So would Dany be if she was Lyanna's daughter? Then why is she not a warg? She has not walked into any of the dragons, right?
Because more than
No,
likely,
she hasn't.
No, she doesn't need to. More than likely, Rhaegar theorized that mixing the 2 bloodlines would bring out the prince that was promised, and more than likely he theorized like that's what would enable her to hatch dragons.
Scott, you're bending my brain, but I don't agree.
Why not? You don't think the Starks are wargs, or that
Well-
Rhaegar made a leap of faith on that one?
I think that the whole like battle against the Warg King or in the Greenwoods, like in the history of Ice and Fire, doesn't mean that everyone's a Warg, because we see that
Yeah,
like Rickon's not quite. I mean,
he's not old enough. But
Yeah, I
Shaggy
think-
Dog's totally like on
Don't
board
you
with
think-
Rickon. Come on.
Don't you think that the direwolves really are what brought it out? Like, it's not like every generation of Starks like was into this. Like, they know nothing about it.
I think it is
Yeah,
every generation
exactly.
of Starks, but I also think you're right, Adam. I do think they do need to have like a direwolf sort of companion to help their abilities manifest. If you look at Sansa, her abilities are really going nowhere because, well, lady. And if you look at Arya, she's slowly developing, and she made like a jump. She saw through like the eyes of a cat when she had her own eyesight taken from her. John's
well, she saw through Nymeria as well.
right.
When they tore apart the Brave Companions.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, and Jon's seen through the eyes of Ghost, and well, Bran kind of goes without saying. But yeah, I mean, I think they need a direwolf to sort of, as their animal companion to make it work, and it kind of also explains some of the Starks' like just weird burial traditions. If you look at like how they bury the Starks in Winterfell, the Kings of Winter are all buried with like a statue of like a direwolf and a sword that's there to keep the vengeful spirit in, which was really unusual because normally in like religion you want your spirit to sort of pass into the afterlife and to go on into the ever after or heaven or whatever you want to call it. But they're keeping like vengeful spirits in, which kind of would make sense if they're all wargs and they didn't want them to try and pull a Varamir Sixskins and like take over somebody else in Winterfell.
No, I mean that's. I think that's bullshit because Ned would have taught his children how to be wargs had he been a warg.
But he doesn't
Right?
have he didn't have a direwolf. He couldn't.
Okay, so they haven't seen a direwolf south of the wall for 100 years. That means that like that knowledge just dropped out. It's like, oh well, we can't warg anymore. No more direwolves.
Well, there hadn't been any dragons for 100 years, and there were wargs beyond the wall.
I just think the most convincing thing is at a basic, profound level what Scott said. Like, Dany's done all this stuff that's fundamentally very special and very crazy. And what has Jon really done?
Got killed?
Yeah, that's not special. If he
I thought it
comes
was-
back, that'll be some special shit, but might tell us more about Melisandre than him.
Hmm.
I hope he doesn't. Fuck him.
Wow. No, I mean, I still don't buy it, but
Okay.
we've been on this for a while.
Oh yeah, Jon has led the
What's-
wildlings through. That's pretty big, right?
Yeah, but that's not like hatching dragons big.
But he's a warg. It's like a similar thing.
Loads
right?
of people are wargs. Faramir Sixskins is a warg. Warg is like low-level entry magic. Wargs is like the Michael
Oh,
Kors,
Jesus.
and like flying dragons and hatching dragons' eggs is like the, Chanel bespoke couture.
But
The what?
Yeah, that's girl talk. Don't worry, Varley.
Okay.
Anyway, we've
Okay,
been on this a long
so
time. We should
Dany-
probably move on.
Dany, how did Dany hatch the dragons? She was willing to sacrifice a person to the fire to bring the dragons, right? To give life to the dragons, right?
Or is that correlation
sounds-
rather than causation?
Which sounds very heiress-like.
Yep.
Yeah. She's the heiress's daughter, not her.
Well, didn't George just say like that was like a unique magical moment?
Did he?
I think that was in the fireproof thing.
Yeah.
Because it couldn't have been like that unique. Because like if you look at like the Targaryens beforehand, like there was a crap load of them. I mean, that was the whole Dance of the Dragons thing. Like everybody had dragons everywhere. So
Yeah, sounds like him just getting out of a narrative hole. What I would suggest is, I mean, I think we can talk about this for 3 hours, but let's table that to another podcast where there's more people who know stuff, and I will be very interested to listen. I think that's why these books are amazing, right? You can get your mind blown having read them so many times still. So, is there anything else we want to talk
Yep.
about in this chapter, like that's not to do with R plus L equals D or J? E.g., the fact that Robert has abused his wife, that Robert is profoundly self-absorbed. Oh, it's so unfair. He still has Lyanna. I mean, that guy is just obnoxious to the extreme.
Yeah.
In a way that
At
didn't
least
come
he-
across enough in the show. In the show, he's just this sort of jovial Henry VIII fucking and hunting, and I don't think they bring across just how genuinely obnoxious he is.
At least he feels sorry about hitting his wife.
He doesn't really. He doesn't actually feel sorry about hitting his wife. All he says is it's not very kingly. He doesn't think
that-
about
No,
her
but he
feelings
says,
or her
"I
physical
shouldn't have
life.
done
Doesn't that make it even worse? He realizes that it's wrong or not kingly or whatever, but he still does it anyway. And probably it's not the first time he's done this.
I think it's I think he doesn't
Which
regret
makes
it
it
in any
even
real
worse.
way. Also, well done, Ned, for saying that Barrett exists, which means he's
Oh,
going to
yeah.
get killed. Idiot.
Yeah, poor Bar.
yeah, way to protect children there, Ned.
Yeah, he's
That's-
a guy who has all the right intentions and all the wrong ways of going about everything. Anything else on this chapter? Nope. Okay, well,
No, actually, just one more thing. How would Jaime Lannister be hand to the king and Kingsguard?
And also Warden of the East, let's not forget.
Right.
I think this
And the
is
West
just
eventually,
Cersei trying
and
to
just
get every
everything.
possible title for Jamie.
You just get him all the titles, and eventually people will be like, "Oh, he's king," I guess, right?
Right.
That's the
But I mean,
competition.
haven't previous Lord Commanders been the hand before? So like, there's precedent, I think, for that.
Has
Oh,
there
and
been?
there was a little line about Arya in this where he said it's not right for a little girl to have this much anger. So Arya is already sort of becoming darker.
I don't know. It's Lannister overreach, the whole getting Jamie to be appointed to everything. How can Tywin possibly think this isn't going to piss everyone off? That it's sustainable? I mean, not all at once. It's just ridiculous.
I don't think Tywin has much to do with this. This is probably
Yeah,
just
Cersei.
Ugh. But again, bad parenting. Like, he needs to have more control over Cersei. He really does.
Tywin is a terrible parent. I think we all know that.
He's just a terrible person altogether. And he's also just not as clever as he thinks or people think he is. But that's for another day.
Yeah, I mean, she got hit in the face and she still wouldn't shut up. Right? Guys?
Yeah.
Girls?
Yeah. Ugh. Anyway.
No, I feel bad for saying that.
I just figured that letting it be awkward would be your punishment.
Fair enough.
Don't worry, I'll edit it out of the podcast so you don't get like abuse from all the women on the forums.
That means it's going to be the first thing they hear when they hear the podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're very, very lucky that Jed sent in a podcast ballad.
So it's not like, oh, silence your women by hitting them.
Stop saying it.
Oh no.
Stop giving me recorded audio that I can edit mischievously. Have you learnt nothing?
I think it's obvious that I have not. In that I might
He's just
have
like Robert. He
diarrhea
doesn't
of the
care.
mouth.
Oh, it's a joy and a pleasure. Okay, so I think we've done quite enough on this chapter, although I hope that there is a follow-up episode. So we now skip over Cat 7 and John 5, and indeed Tyrion 6. So this, I think, is the it's the combination of chapters so far, or it's the episode so far we've had the most skipping, because we're doing it in a linear fashion, straight into Eddard XI, who is Adam, I think?
No.
No?
No, I think that one's me.
Okay, cool. Go for it, Scott.
Okay. Yeah, so this chapter opens with Ned holding court in the place of the king, who's out hunting. In addition to Ned, the small council members Pycelle, Varys, and Littlefinger are all present. Appearing before them are Sir Raymond Derry, Sir Mark Piper, and Sir Carl Vance, and some villagers who claim to be refugees from Wendish Town, Sharer, and Mummersford. All contend that Sir Gregor Clegane raided and burned their aforementioned towns. Sir Raymond claims that Wendish Town villagers sought refuge in their holdfast, but as it was made out of wood, the Lannister men set fire to it, and as people tried to flee, they were shot with arrows. A villager named Joss is called forward and says they would have done the same at Sharer, but that holdfast is made out of stone, and they opted to move on to Mummersford. Ned asks what proof the petitioners have that it was the Lannister men who committed the acts, and while the raiders didn't fly any banners nor have any coats of arms displayed, it's clear to them that it was definitely Sir Gregor Clegane, as no one else in the Seven Kingdoms is as big in stature as he is. In addition, they indicate that all the raiders were mounted on war horses and were well equipped with armor, suggesting they were more than just common bandits. Ned takes note of the fear in the villagers and believes they're scared in naming the father-in-law of the king to be a butcher, and wonders for a moment if Sir Derry and the other knights had even given them a choice about appearing before the court. Pycelle offers up an argument indicating that there's no way they can be certain it was Gregor Clegane, pointing out that there's no reason for him to turn to banditry, as he's an anointed knight in his own right, with lands and incomes already due to him. Littlefinger slyly asks where the knights were when these attacks occurred, as these are their lands that they are charged with protecting. Sir Raymond claims that he was summoned to River Run by Sir Edmure, and Sir Carl and Sir Mark were attending Sir Carl Vance's father in the pass beneath the Golden Tooth. And this actually echoes what Ned knows, that both Tywin and the Tullys are gathering their forces in the area, expecting there to be hostilities to break out. When word of these attacks reached Edmure Tully, he wanted to return the favor and take revenge on the Lannisters, but Lord Hoster commanded them wisely to come to King's Landing first and seek the king's permission, as the Lannisters had broken the king's peace. Ned realizes that Hoster knew if the Tully forces had taken revenge without proof that it was the Lannister men, then Cersei and Tywin would have just claimed that it was the Tullys who broke the king's peace, and you would have kind of had a he said, she said sort of situation. With that, Ned decides to go against Pycelle's advice of either holding off for the king to return or sending the bannermen off to Tywin for justice, and advises Robar Royce to go tell Robert of his decision, and indicates that if it wasn't for his injury, he would ride out himself to deliver the justice in this matter. Seeing an opportunity, Loras Tyrell comes forth and asks for the chance to be able to carry out the task of bringing the mountain that rides to justice. Ned turns him down, but offers him a consolation prize and a complimentary word, but as he thinks Loras is out for vengeance, he's out. Instead, he opts to send men who have no interest or loyalties to any of the involved parties out. They're to be led by Lord Beric Dondarrion, Thoros of Myr, Sir Gladden, and Lord Lothar. Each is going to get 20 men of their own, and Ned's also going to send 20 Stark house guards as well to aid in the task. With that, Ned calls an end to the court for the day, and the chapter ends with Varys suggesting that he should have sent Loras, as the Tyrells would be very good allies to have against the Lannisters, as well as asking why he didn't send Sir Ilyn Payne, who is the king's executioner. And Ned just basically simply tells him he thought it best not to send men who owed any fealty to Tywin. And that's that.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. If you look at the text and the stuff that they say, you know, there's discrepancies all over the place. Some people say there are 50 men, 100 men, hundreds and hundreds. Like, it seems like they could have easily goaded Ned into doing this. I'm not trying to say that those villages didn't necessarily burn. Sure, maybe they did, right? But, and that those villagers weren't being honest or anything. They were crying all over the place. Sure, something bad happened. Was it really Gregor? Was it really, the Lannisters? I don't know. I don't know. There's just a lot of inaccuracies and, weird... when I was reading it again, I was like, wait, what are they saying? What? It just is really unclear. I don't know. So that was the one thing I had about this chapter is, was this Justice League that Ned put out to hunt down Gregor and he, denounces him as a knight and everything, was that warranted?
So Ned is goaded into attainting Gregor, right? I mean, he didn't originally think that's what he was going to do. The question for me is whether Pycelle really wanted him to put off the decision, whether he is on behalf of the Lannisters goading him into doing it, or whether it's the Riverlanders who are goading him into doing it. I mean, he's evidently just a patsy at this point. Or not. I don't know.
Well, I'd say Ned is just simply being predictable. That's one of the downfalls of Ned, is that he's dutiful, he's predictable, he's going to do the right thing, so if you set an obvious choice before him, he's going to make the obvious choice every time. So it seems like if anyone is setting him up, it would probably be Varys.
Yeah, I mean, the Riverlanders wouldn't have known that Ned would be the one sitting there whenever they reached King's Landing, right?
He was hunting the king. Or you mean they wouldn't have known that Robert was out hunting?
Exactly.
Who suggests the hunt? Who sets up the hunt for that day?
Robert did.
I think.
But what would he have done, do you think?
Well, he wouldn't have gone after the mountain, would he?
Robert, I think, would have done nothing.
He wouldn't have attainted the mountain. I mean, all my point is just that someone has put out some charges against the mountain, which are heavy, but there's no real proof. I mean, yes, there's a big guy, and he's got a helmet, but we know from other battles that take place that people can simulate armor for their own nefarious ends. So at this point, it's an investigation, isn't it? You're trying to ask and investigate whether these crimes actually happened. But Ned just goes straight to stripping. I mean, attainting someone is a major, major big deal in this world. You're absolutely excluding him from civilized society. You're stripping away his lands, his property, his right to be of his family. It's like declaring someone a bastard or worse than that. And it just seems like such an extreme reaction
Mm.
in a world where you've just been stabbed in the leg and you know there's shady shit going on.
Well, he's just looking for an excuse. I
Well,
mean,
not stabbed in the
no
leg,
one
you know what I
likes
mean.
no one likes Gregor, right? Like, you know, he knows that like this is probably true, and I don't know. I'm more curious as to what Tywin said to get the Mountain to do this. I mean, he would just do it anyway, but without them being kind of, you know, they're not really in control, right? Like the king is still there, Ned's still there. Like it's going to be really obvious who's doing this. Like even if you say like, oh, well, they've got to confirm it. Like he's going to send a bunch of people out and find them, and then oh, yep, it's definitely the Mountain. All right, time to kill him. Like,
Well, that's why they send him out, you know, without any banners, so there's plausible deniability.
Yeah.
But there's not plausible deniability for the Mountain. Like there's plausible deniability for the Lannisters, but like, what does the Mountain think he's going to get out of this? Like, does he already know? Like, is Tywin planning something like bigger at this point, like a takeover or something, or like none of that really seems.
I just
like
presume
it's
that
already
Tywin
going
has
on,
promised
right?
him yet
I
more
think
wealth.
I
and
think it just
lands.
there's somebody says he's Tywin Lannister's mad dog, and I think that's exactly what Gregor Clegane is. He gets this opportunity to kill people and he takes it. He doesn't care what's behind it.
Yeah, because I mean, what happens if the king lives? You know, I mean, what happens to him? You know, like he's not long for this world. Like he's gonna be an outlaw. Like what? Like Tywin wouldn't be able to protect him.
Well, to be fair, I mean, if you're the Mountain and Tywin tells you to do something, Tywin's never, you know, sold him down the river or never done him wrong so far. So
No, I know. It's just,
why not stick with the winner?
could have gone horribly wrong for him.
It
If
definitely
it
was a
wasn't for
risky thing.
the kidnapping of Tyrion and everything else that goes on.
It seems a lot of it was more of a judgment on the character of the Mountain as opposed to the actual guilt of or innocence of him in these particular events. You know, because everything we've heard up to the Mountain.
Horrible
Yeah.
justice. That is not justice. And for a man who set such store by, yes, let my young son Brandon see justice being enacted in the, you know, the man who must swing the sword himself and all this stuff. You judge the crime, not the person. And it just seems to me that this is horrible. It's a horrible act. Like, you know, Kat gets so much stick for arresting Tyrion in the inn at the crossroads, and I agree it's a dumb move. But I think I think that this is an equivalently dumb move.
But
it's
in
bad
the world,
justice, and it's bad, and it's bad in the politics of the time.
I just think, given their culture, I mean, I don't know, like worse justice is handed out all the time. Look at who gets sent to the wall for doing nothing. You know, like look at the way things are. Like, you know, to Ned,
yeah, but low level
rapers, right,
not
good.
Major aristos or who are part of major houses with major backing. And by the way, major backing of a guy whose son just felled you. You know, just think about the vulnerability. You haven't yet got your daughters out of King's Landing. You're in you know that the king doesn't really back you. You're in this hugely vulnerable position. And by the way, you're now going to go after the henchman of the most powerful man in Westeros with no backup. You know, your best mate, your trusted advisor's just been killed. It's just tactically so stupid. Sorry, rant over.
No, that's
I think we
spot
all
on.
agree that Ned is very stupid.
I wouldn't say stupid. It's honor undutiful. He has to do this.
It's not dutiful. It's not
Is
dutiful. He is not judging the
honorable
crime.
and dutiful? I mean, he's supposed to keep the kingdom together, right? He's the hand of the king. The king's main objective is to keep the country together, right? And this is basically triggering. This is sort of the final push towards outright war, right?
And yes, exactly, Nadia. You've hit the nail on the head here, because being hand of the king is not about implementing your justice. It's implementing the king's justice. You've just had a meeting with the king, because doing the linear reread, these chapters come one after the other. You just had a meeting with the king. He's made you his hand again. He has told you explicitly that he's pissed off at you because you've caused trouble with the queen's brother, and he wants the two of you just to kiss and make up, keep the peace. I mean, this is exactly the heart of their disagreement and that conversation. Now, someone comes to you with a case, and your task is to implement the king's justice, the king's wishes. He wants peace in his kingdom. He does not want you attainting the mountain. Yes, it's bad that some sort of peasants have been pillaged or whatever. Go investigate quietly, discreetly if you must. But basically he just wants you to just smooth everything over superficially. Now that may be poor justice, but that is your job. It's to implement that. You're not king. You're not sitting atop the Iron Throne to do what you want to do. Ugh.
Exactly, and without hard and fast evidence, right? Except that the leader was big.
Exactly. It's not. You cannot strip someone of that. This is such a. This is, you can't very easily execute someone who's an aristo in this world. Short of that, this is about you're making them a non-person when it comes to property. Anyway, I'm repeating myself, but I think it's a dumb move.
But okay, just Hoster comes across as a very smart person, right? I mean,
yeah, but by the low standards of the day.
But instead of making a move himself, he sort of pushes Ned into doing it instead. I mean, he would have pushed Robert if he had the chance, but since Ned was there, it's
but massively endangering, his daughter, his grandchildren. I mean, if that's smart.
But he wouldn't have known that Ned would be the one making the decision, right?
Well, look at Ned's alternative. I mean, if he says, okay, yeah, the Tullys can go out and take vengeance on them like they wanted to. Okay, well, that's plunging the realm into war. That's the furthest thing from what Robert wanted. Robert wanted the peace, so he sends. So I mean, in Ned's view, this is justice. Send a group of guys who have no vested interest in either side out to take care of it. He would have gone himself were he able to, but he couldn't.
See, but the thing is, he's sending 100 men instead of attainting a person and sending them out to kill him. Why could he not send them out on a reconnaissance mission? I mean, just go and see what happens. If this person attacks again, you figure out who it is, and then you do something.
I mean, isn't the sensible thing in this, if you've got a scuffle kicking off, you don't go in with 100 men to bring this person in shackles. What you do is you go and have you send out a raven or whatever to Tywin and say, look, we need to have a chat, because someone who's working for you is evidently off the leash. I mean, that's the way you do it discreetly, no?
And then Tywin says, no, he didn't.
Yeah, and then the king says, kiss and make up and just believe Tywin because I want peace to be kept, right? I mean, it's evident what Robert would want in this situation. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm not saying that under no circumstances should Ned go against that, but in his current circumstances, which are exceptionally weak, to go against his king and Tywin, this is not the time.
And send away some of his own men in the process.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, almost every chapter we've read of Ned, and we've done quite a few in the last couple of weeks, back to back, he's depleting his forces and depleting his forces. So let me, put a few more on the city watch. Let me, lose a few in a skirmish with Jaime. Let me send some off into the river. He's tactically so weak at the moment and doesn't seem to realize it, which I find weird for a man who's been through war.
Every time he does it, it's just a little, So it by the time it adds up, he probably is like, well, there's nothing I can do about it now,
And the whole irony is he's sitting there and he's thinking, yeah, this is probably a ruse on the part of Tywin to sort of get Edmure to sort of send out his troops and make his own sort of holdfast less well secure. It's like, why doesn't he translate that to himself? He's doing basically exactly the same thing. It's so frustrating.
Even though he has young daughters to protect.
Because King's Landing's untouchable, he thinks.
Naive man. I mean, why would it be untouchable? A man who's lived through a war where it has been touched.
Well, because the king is alive, and it's a much bigger city. Blah blah blah.
Ned was just attacked inside the city by the Queen's brother. He lost men. His men died.
But Tywin isn't going to march on King's Landing. I think that's the thing.
Yeah.
But shouldn't he have realized by now that there are enemies inside the city?
Oh,
Just because Jaime has left doesn't mean, there's no one else left.
He's real dumb to
so
that.
Stupid.
Well, I wouldn't say stupid. I mean, it's just his lack of political acumen. He's just not politically perceptive. He's a soldier,
Exactly.
and that's what he was meant to be.
Stupid.
And when he's in the north, he has no problem because justice can be straightforward and swift. Oh, look, I found a deserter. Shlink, there goes his head. Justice.
Yes, but these are low-level peasants. These are low-level peasants. These aren't men who are personally the henchmen of Tywin. He's the richest, most powerful guy in the kingdoms. Justice is not justice for everyone. Not in our world and not in this world. It's not equal.
Yes.
Oh, well, I feel very depressed now. Anything else on this chapter?
Yeah, that kind of bummed me out. Thanks, Bina.
I should stop reading Philip K. Dick. I've been depressed ever since I finished my reread of The Man in the High Castle, which was 5 minutes before this podcast started, so...
Oh, which we will have to discuss.
Yes, because I have questions that need answers.
Yep.
On so many things in life. Anything else in this chapter?
Yeah, just out of curiosity, what do you think would have happened had Ned would have been like, "Okay, Loras, you feel like going? Sure, have at." You think he actually would have got it done?
Well, if Loras had gone and Gregor had killed him, I think it could have gone two ways. Either the Tyrells would have sided with Ned in the coming fight with the Lannisters, where they would have said that, okay, Gregor Clegane killed Loras, so we're going to fight the Lannisters, or they could have gone against Ned, saying, "Why did you send him?" Although, even though he asked for it.
I don't think.
No,
Loras
I think they would have
done
gone
anything.
with the Starks.
So you don't think there's any chance Loras could have succeeded?
A, I don't think he would succeed,
could
but
have.
B,
No,
on the more profound
I think
point.
he
No,
could have.
because
I
it
think
was an
Loras
ambush. Anyway.
I think Loras is quite cunning, isn't he? I mean, he would have.
Yeah, Jamie describes him later on as being like a younger version of himself.
Exactly, I think he'd have a chance.
Yeah.
Against
but
the mountain?
Well, he beat him in a joust.
The whole thing was supposed to be an ambush.
By
so they
cheating.
would capture
They needed a lot more men.
Ned, right?
I mean, the fact that
Yeah.
Ned has to send out 100 men to get the mountain in tells you how terrifying this guy is.
And it still wasn't enough. Like they
Let's
needed.
see, he's sending
they needed
100 men
more.
because the mountain has his own men too, right?
Yep.
But they thought of this as, a raiding party. What's a raiding party, right? They're going around like it's not like 100 men. Oh, that should easily be enough to deal with it. They didn't see this as a military action with, like the mountain had way more men than they knew.
Yeah, it's true. The small folk gave like conflicting information. So like one was like, oh, there's like 50 of them. One was like, I think 100, and other one said hundreds and hundreds. So it was not really no one apparently took a good accurate count while they were getting butchered and cut down, burnt and shot. So I guess Ned just went with a round number.
Okay, so anything else on this chapter? Nope. Okay, then finally we get a consecutive chapter, which is Sansa III. He put AKA the one where that gets everyone killed.
I did.
Nice. I see where you're going with this, Adam. Over to you.
Yep. I mean, Ned starts it and Sansa finishes it. It's that 1-2 punch, father and daughter. So Sansa 3, Sansa is, she's remarking about how Loras is so dreamy and doesn't wonder why he was sent off. And my favorite part is that she talks about how old and like nasty Barrack is because he's almost 22. He's
I know.
So old. And I'm like, and I think she teases Jane Poole because she's like, well, he's kind of handsome, 22, man, he's in his prime. What's wrong with you? But Sansa's what, still 12, 13 at this point or something. So I guess we get it. Littlefinger shows up and gives her a life lesson, or I guess another life lesson, one of many in his series of turning her into Dark Sansa. And she still doesn't get it yet. Let's see. Bjorn is taking men from the dungeons for the Night's Watch. Oh, Arya is actually pretty nice to Sansa in this chapter. Sansa gets pretty upset after Ned tells them that they're going to be sent away. Sansa gets really upset. And Arya's even after everything's been going on with them, Arya gets real, oh, come on, it's not going to be that bad. We're going to see Bran again and go home. And she's really trying to cheer her up. And Sansa's just screw you, bitch. I wish you died instead of Lady. I think she thinks that. I don't think she actually says that. Yeah, so this is where when Ned tells them about how they're going home, and Sansa mentions how Joffrey is nothing like her father or his father, and that's when Ned fucking realizes everything and is about to get everyone killed. And at this point, he has plenty of time, and especially with this sudden realization that Cersei's children are not Robert's. They should have been on a boat that fucking day, and it would have saved a lot of problems, but, what can you do? Oh, and there's a really sad moment. Sansa wakes up, she has this dream, and she thinks Lady is still alive, And she's like looking out for Lady, and she realizes it was just a dream, and it's like the saddest kid ever.
Is how the hell, if there's that line in there, that Jane Poole and Sansa are the same age, that they're roughly, they look the same age, they are the same age, blah, blah. How the heck did the Boltons think that later on, in Dance with Dragons, they were going to be able to pass this Jane Poole imposter off as Arya? We know that but we don't care, and you're going to have to fight us if you think if you are going to call us out. Like the Boltons are literally just asking people in the North, especially, to call them out on the fake Arya thing. So I really hope that it finally comes crashing down in their faces, because it's just so stupid, I feel like.
No.
Life, he says this quote, life is not a song. And I just read that again, and I was just like, what? Like, Baelish, this is crap. Like, you're totally lying. Like, I feel like everything that Baelish has been doing, a lot of it has been because he thinks still that life is kind of like a song. I mean, I know that he kind of had a big learning of a lesson happen when he went up against Brandon Stark and got the shit kicked out of him. Like, yes, big lesson learned there. Obviously, don't do that again. And, the brave heart always isn't going to win out against the strong, proven knight. Yeah, I gotcha. I think he learned that pretty well. But this romanticizing thing he has for Cat and then through Sansa, like, that's totally based off of song and off of the old legends and stories and stuff that he's heard. I think the biggest thing that comes to mind is, I don't remember exactly where this is, so somebody can help me out on this. The whole Bale the Bard thing where he, steals the King of Winterfell's daughter, or the Lord Stark's daughter. I think he's totally kind of following in that footstep kind of thing. I think he also kind of, he's kind of reliving the Rhaegar Lyanna kind of thing. I think later when he kidnaps Sansa, I think he sees himself as the romantic good guy that a lot of people still see Rhaegar as. He isn't the bad guy at that point. So I don't know. I looked at that quote and I was like, really, Peter? Really? That's you're just trying to, I don't know, you're just saying something that's not correct.
But I have to say, even as a Sansa apologist, I find this chapter quite tough. I mean, she really is obnoxious. Like, she's sort of sitting there and she thinks, oh, it's so pathetic that Jane fancies Beric because, she's only a steward's daughter. She's never going to actually marry someone who's a lord. I mean, she's right, but she's just really mean. Like, the way she says it is, the way she thinks it is just so sort of... I mean, you can think it, like, in the way that her mother thinks it of Maya Stone, when Maya Stone's saying, oh, I'm in love with this guy, I'm going to get married. And Kat's kind of sad for her, and she thinks, yeah, if he sleeps with you, it's going to be the wrong side of the sheets. He's going to end up marrying an aristo, which, by the way, we know he does. But it's not harsh, it's just sad.
Well, that's probably because Kat is not 11.
Yeah, but Sansa's just like a little bitch in this chapter, and I love her dearly, but
yeah, she's like that person that's like, fat people offend me. Like she's really bad here.
Does she literally say that in the chapter? Because it sounds like something she might say.
It fits, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but see, this is the start of the very controversial Sansa chapters, where people blame her for everything that goes wrong and blame her for Ned dying. Right?
Yeah, no, I think we can firmly establish that her parents do really stupid shit too.
No, it's Catelyn's fault that he dies.
And Ned like immediately. Sorry.
I'm actually jumping to the end of the chapter where when Ned is telling them that that you have to get back home, and Sansa's main concern is that I was supposed to marry Joffrey. I'm going to be the queen. I want to have his babies. I want to stay here. Okay, so that's her main concern, right? And then Arya's main concern is I want to continue my dancing lessons, right?
Uh-huh.
At the end of it, what Ned does is he tells her, no, you can't marry this person. I'll find someone else for you.
And then he tells Arya, you'll get what you want.
Exactly. He tells Arya that you'll get what you want, and Sansa does not get an explanation why.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
Hmm.
Especially for a 13-year-old to be like, what just happened? My
Yeah, it just
dog's
feels like
killed. You're taking
favoritism.
away
Exactly.
my life.
Exactly. And
Like-
what else would you expect a 12 or 13-year-old person to do?
Well, that's my point. That of all the really dumb mistakes that are made that lead up to these awful events, with Kat and Ned, they should know better. They're adults. They've been living in this world longer. Whereas with Kat, I think people, Kat, with Sansa, it's not that I'm saying she doesn't do stuff that's culpable. It's just people hold her up to such a standard. She's only this kid, and she's been raised in this very kind of like high romance courtier type way, and she doesn't know any better.
And her just running off to Cersei is like expected, like totally expected. But
Yeah.
the problem is right here. As soon as like this should have been like the chapter that like where everyone is saved, right? Because like in I guess in like a more like traditional literature, maybe it would have been right. Like, oh, he's nothing like his father. Light bulb goes off, and Ned's like, oh my gosh, I get it. Girls, come with me right now. I have to make sure you're safe before I do some shit, because some shit's about to go down, right? And everyone's saved, because, like, this kid, out of the mouths of babes saves them, right? But the opposite happens.
Yeah, because fundamentally there's wider things going on than just solving this murder mystery, which is what we think we're doing when we start reading the book. Who killed John Arryn and why? So Peter Slalish 15 makes the point that if Jane Poole looks and acts exactly the same age as Sansa, then why on earth do the Boltons think they can pass her off as being Arya? And is it that the Boltons don't care that they know that she doesn't look anything like the age of Arya, and they're just goading people in the north to say, come on, call us out on our shit. We're just powerful, we won't do it.
Because it's still been a year and a half, 2 years? Like, how long is that before that goes down?
I think at that age, people grow differently. Yeah, exactly. And there's not that much. Arya is 2 years younger than Sansa?
Yeah, I agree. I think this wasn't a big deal.
Age.
I mean, there's depending, you could be 11 and look 16 and 11 and look 8. It just depends on where you're
they
getting
They could have tried to pass anyone off with the right hair color and close to the right age.
Yeah, and he just can sound a little bit highborn. I agree. I don't think that's as much of a big point. The other point that he made was that Peter Baelish criticizes Sansa for living in a dream or living in a song, but he says actually this is really unfair and hypocritical because no one is more captive of a sort of romantic interpretation of history than Littlefinger, insofar as how he thinks of Kat and his childhood romance with her. Do you think that's fair? Do you think Littlefinger's... I kind of feel he's deeply pragmatic, but is he in fact deeply romantic with a capital R?
Could he possibly be talking, sort of relating Sansa's situation to himself, where he dreamt of, one day marrying Kat when he was a boy, and then it turned out that he was poor, and there was no way he was going to marry Kat because she was a high lady, and now he's sort of telling Sansa, this happened to me, my life was not the song I thought it was, and yours probably won't be either. Sort of, he's passing on his wisdom to Sansa.
Yeah, I can see that.
A little bit, I'd think. I think it's less I'm passing on my wisdom and more of I've got plans for you, little girl, than any kind of like mentoring position. But
he's doing the creep.
He touched her cheek, his thumb lightly tracing the line of her cheekbone. Creepy.
And so specific.
I know.
Who's more creepy, Littlefinger or George?
I know. Good writer.
Oh, and another thing, when the day that Lord Beric leaves with the rest of the men, Arya comes down for breakfast and she says, "Where is everyone? Where have they gone?" Arya knows nothing about what is happening in King's Landing. Okay, Sansa is more aware than she is.
Although she's overheard that entire conversation between Varys and Illyrio.
Exactly.
She knows more than she thinks she knows.
To escape. The fact that Arya manages to escape has more to do with Yoren finding her than anything else.
Agree.
And I think people sort of, seem to think that Sansa was stupid for getting captured, but that's not really true, is it? She had no way of getting out, and Arya only got out because she got lucky.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
So other random points to make.
Actually,
Sansa.
Arya got out in part because she was skilled. She went towards the docks initially, and then she spied Lannister guys disguised as, I think, like dock workers or shipmates. And she was like, "Oh crap, the boat's a trap. I'm not going there." So she turned around and went back into the city. So I think it's a little bit of both. Part of it was, Yoren saved her bacon, and part of it was she managed to avoid a couple of pitfalls.
Oh yeah. Arya is very street smart, but I think their level of awareness about what was happening in the city was sort of similar, where they might have realized different things, but neither one of them was, sort of fully aware of everything that was going on, right?
Ultimately, they're kids, so no matter how smart they are, they're going to need adult help to get forward.
Yeah.
So that kind of almost goes without saying, I feel. Random asides, Sansa cockily asks Septa Mordain if the mountain's head will be put on a spike. Irony. And then, so Arya and her get into a fight, and Arya throws a blood orange at her, and then her dress gets blotted with the red, and then she gets pissed off, and it's ruined, and she throws it on the fire. Massive foreshadowing to when she gets her first period.
Yes.
Which, if so,
Almost
just shows
exactly
how
the
well
same.
planned George has these big sort of emotional beats of the story. That is all.
Yeah.
Anything else on this chapter? I feel it's a bit unfair, actually, because most people hate Sansa, and Nadia and I love her, so it's a bit uneven.
Yeah, this is
We should have an Arya defender on here as well.
Actually, one thing is Littlefinger actually overheard Sansa saying she would have sent Loras, which actually prompted the whole creeper situation. And Littlefinger agreed, although it ended up being for different reasons. So maybe he thinks, maybe he does actually legitimately think that, she could be groomed into being a better player of the game.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
In spite of her handicap of having Ned and Catelyn as parents.
I think, you know what? I think she's just young, and she matures into someone who I think is going to be a very, very slick player of the game. I think she's just smart. She's book smart. So when she was taught needlework and sigils and courtesy, she was the absolute A-grade student at all that stuff. And now she's being taught deception and politics by Littlefinger. I think she's gonna become the better player of that than he is. I really hope so anyway, maybe. But yeah, I think she's just book smart.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree in time. It makes her a really interesting comparison to the Tyrell girl when she shows up, because when she shows up, you can tell the difference between the two families, where Sansa was sort of prim and proper and, be noble and honorable and straightforward, and the Tyrells just were completely not that way.
But that's how you go from being a minor house to a major house in a few generations.
Yeah.
Okie dokes. Anything more from anyone else on anything? Nope. Well, with that, I guess we can round out this episode and look forward to episode 9. So if you're following along at home, that's basically going to cover Tyrion's trial. So it's the events from 11th to the 18th of October 298. It's Dany 5, Tyrion 5, Cat 7, Tyrion 6, and Bran 5. So 5 chapters. Otherwise, thank you very much to Peter Sladage 15 for sending in his chapter notes, for Jed for recording his song, and to our hosts, so to Nadia, Adam, Matt, and Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And in the meantime, do you guys have any other episodes coming up that you want to sort of talk about, publicize? Are you guys doing a Star Wars edition of VOC?
Oh, I mean, someone maybe already did that, apparently.
Yeah, apparently somebody from
those
Europe thought it would be a
asshole
great
Europe
idea to
people,
try and
yeah.
spoil it for everyone in the States.
Boo. Who could that be? No, because I just knew that everyone would want to talk about Star Wars, so there would be several VOCs. But I want to hear what you guys have to say about it, though. So is that being planned? Is that happening?
I hope so.
Well, there's
definitely.
still
I
5
think-
days
I
to
think
go
it's
until
still-
it's released in Pakistan, so
Oh.
I'm safe.
Wait a minute. How long is it?
It's releasing here on the 25th.
Oh, weird.
Oh man.
That's not too bad. That's a week.
Oh, so you don't know
Yeah, that's not that bad.
Chewbacca is a Sith
Oh,
Lord.
sweet summer child.
Yeah, so don't spoil anything, guys.
Yes, please.
And has anyone got anything
Darth
else?
Vader is Luke's father. Nadia, sorry.
No.
Is anything
Yeah.
else?
Not that far behind.
anything else coming up though? Any other thoughts?
Well, we're doing our serial killer thing tomorrow, right?
Oh shit, yeah.
Which one?
We're doing H.H. Holmes.
Oh, that guy was from New Hampshire.
Sure was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been reading all sorts of crazy books.
Mudget.
Yeah, so I'm kind of getting myself creeped out of that podcast.
Why?
Because he's creepy. Like, if you stay up late at night and you read books about people, like, massacring people in purpose-built prisons, it's, like, horrible.
Yeah, but he's so interesting because he didn't find, like, any, like, sexual pleasure, like Ted Bundy or Gracie or anything. He wanted profit. Like, that's all it was. It was great.
No, it can't just have been money. There's easier ways to make fat cash than that. He could have easily made. Well, we can talk about this tomorrow. There's no need to bore everyone about this now. But
yeah,
okay. But I don't think it was just. It cannot have just been money.
Anyway, Star Wars
awesomeness. Okay, well, you can find Vassals of Kingsgrave at VOK Podcast on Twitter, vokpodcast.wordpress.com. We have Tumblr, apparently. Facebook page, apparently. So, yeah, check us out there.
Do we?
We do. And if you would like to become involved in this podcast, then please sign up to the Podcast of Ice and Fire forums and get involved, because we'd love to have you on board. So, thank you for listening.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
The wind blew across the dusty plain as the Northmen rode along. The quiet wolf of a winter fell, and 6 bannermen leal and strong. For the she-wolf who had aroused a war, they'd hunted low and high. They rode up to their destiny, 'neath the lonely Tower of Joy. The tower stood alone, framed by the blood-red mountains of dawn. And 3 brave men stood beneath those stones, tall and proud that fateful morn. Their white cloaks billowing in the wind, they held their heads and honor high, prepared to do their duty 'neath the lonely Tower of Joy. The white bull and the black bat, side by side with Sir Arthur Dane. The sword of the morning sadly smiled as wind stirred his silver mane. The great sword Dawn strapped to his back, forged from a fallen star. They waited for the Northmen as they rode up from afar. The quiet wolf spoke softly and fixed them with his steely glare. I looked for you on the trident, the bull replied, we were not there. You were not at King's Landing, nor the surrender of Storm's End. Oh, we are of the King's Guard, and our knees do not easily bend. Sir Darry fled with Queen and Prince, they sailed across the sea. But we are of the King's Guard, and the King's Guard do not flee. Now it begins, Sir Arthur said, unsheathing Dawn, he waved her high. No, now it ends, said the quiet wolf, 'neath the lonely Tower of Joy. The battle joined in a rush of steel, the 7 and the 3. But above that clashing storm of swords, they heard a woman's plea. The she-wolf howled out, "Eddard!" in a long and mournful cry, as a storm of blue rose petals swirled across a blood-streaked sky. The Kingsguard held their honor, it 'twas their duty to defend. With valor, skill, and courage, they fought to the bitter end. But when that fateful morn was done, there stood but only two, the quiet wolf and the crannock man, his friend both leal and true. The wolf pulled down the tower, the final act was at an end, and used those stones to build their cairns to honor foe and friend. 'Neath those mountains all that stands are stone cairns pointing to the sky. They're the only lonely echoes left of that lonely tower of joy. They're the only lonely echoes left of that lonely tower of joy.